Have you ever asked yourself, how do we incorporate mindfulness in our everyday lives? Does it benefit our overall health? And how does our personal narrative intersect with the natural world? In this first episode, we talk about mindfulness in the land and sourcing of our food. We speak to Bjorn of Edible Garden City, and the name of the organization says it all, so let's just hear from him. I'm so excited to be here with co-founder of Edible Garden City, Bjorn. Hi, Bjorn.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So this is really interesting because I'm now in Singapore, just out of quarantine, and you are?
Out of quarantine, but in Australia, in the countryside where I see mountains.
It must be so beautiful.
And a river, which is very different.
Yeah. Bjorn, I guess we'll go straight into this wonderful organization that you have co-created, Edible Garden City. So when I was doing research on mindful sourcing and mindfulness of the land and where we get our food from, everything and the ethos that what EGC does just aligned with what I was thinking about. So perhaps you can just start about talking, how did you get here in the first place?
Well, it's probably about 11, 12 years ago when I was still in the advertising industry, and having moved from Singapore to London, the whole winter period was quite difficult, which then made me kind of recheck on my life to kind of see whether what I was doing was a little bit dreary, helping corporations make more money. It was couldn't find much purpose in it, and thought maybe I wanted to pursue something different in life, something a bit more sustainable, because there was a lot of buzz during that time about climate change. There was a lot of talk about food, moving back to the country, local food movement. And during that period on TV, there was a lot of gardening celebrities. You watch these shows about them moving back in the country, starting their own farm. And I thought that was really really romantic and really interesting. I really wanted to lead that kind of life. And so we kind of decided that to leave our jobs, to take a sabbatical and to explore agriculture and farming through this program called Woofing. You can actually travel by working and living on organic farms all around the world in exchange for food and lodging. So that's how we saw the UK. We went to Wales, to Scotland, to Spain, worked on the farm. It was really a breakthrough in realization that we could live a life quite different, and that really opened up our eyes. And we met so many like-minded people that wanted to lead a more self-sustainable life, that really wanted to explore running their own small holding and farm. Being very practical as a Singaporean brought up kid, had to make a conscious choice and then went back into go back to school, right, to learn about agriculture. But going back to school actually was quite an eye-opener for me, or at least from a standpoint on looking at agriculture and farming in a very, very different way. A lot more spiritual in the approach to farming. It was not so much about business and theory and science, but a lot about connection, connecting to the land and being a lot more aware to your surroundings, and as a good grower, as a good farmer, what kind of soft skills you need to have. I think that whole experience actually changed the way I look at things a lot differently.
Yeah.
Also made me sort of look deeper into myself, spiritually as well, and then pursuing meditation as one of my practice, which I'm unfortunately very lazy to do these days. But I did it during quarantine, and that really helped.
It does,
having
right?
That routine.
It really makes a difference.
It does, yeah.
And honestly, in your own way, you are with the land right now. I mean, you don't have to go. Just for anyone who lives in a city, I feel like
there's this misconception that if you're in the city, you cannot feel connected to nature. And that is not true, right? I mean, like, that is exactly what you're doing with Edible Garden City. I mean, of course, it helps to be in wide open spaces with mountains and hills and rivers. But like you said, in quarantine, and so was I, you can still feel very connected to yourself and to the land.
Definitely. And what I realized was that, by working in the garden and working on the farm, there's a lot of repeat tasks. And then a lot of these, when you're doing, it feels also like meditation as well, right? You just practice your mindfulness. Really, a lot of times, the subtle changes that happens within your environment and within the space that you work in, that can be quite reflective, can help you reflect a lot on life's lessons and meanings. So working out in the garden has been very beneficial. Somehow there was always a nagging feeling within me to want to come back to Singapore to see what was possible, So what was interesting when I first got back to Singapore was to realize that actually growing up in Singapore, having been surrounded by all this beautiful greenery, parks, plants, landscape gardens, that I was never truly connected to my surroundings, because it was always there, right? It was always present, but we were not part of that process, right? So I was never appreciative of the greenery until I was exposed to nature a lot more outside of Singapore. Coming back to then be a lot more appreciative of what we have. I think as wanting to be a farmer and a grower, you kind of gravitate then to where the farms are located, which was in Kranji. So of course I went there, explored, but it seems at that point of time it was quite difficult to actually get space or land to start a small farm. And all I wanted was 1 acre to do a market garden, to grow some produce for the local market or for restaurants or things like that. Not being able to secure land to do farming, which was slightly disappointing, but actually it was a good thing as well, because it allowed me to look a little bit more inside the city. In one of my many walks around the city, seeing empty grass patches sitting around, perhaps I could convert those small spaces into a farm to supply food to the restaurant next door. So that kind of started me thinking and speaking to other people, like various chefs, to see it was something that was viable. And then it started from that. We built one garden. It has become 200 in the last 8 years.
You're just being mindful about your surroundings just change your perspective completely. It's not that the surroundings have changed. Singapore has always been here, right? Like the greenery, the plants, the it's all been here, but just that shift in mindset, like can change everything around you.
I grew as well as a person to on the way I approach problems and issues, and really found out a lot more about myself, or how I am like as a social entrepreneur, what my values were, and how far I could challenge my values as well for business sustainability, so that I can create bigger impact for the future.
Food sustainability is a buzzword for so many, so I went to see and taste for myself exactly what Edible Garden City offers the community and how we can connect back to the land by looking at our own backyard.
Here, the first plant I want to show you is the blue butterfly pea.
It's so pretty.
Yeah, it's nice, right?
It's like a blue purplish tone.
Yeah, and the color blue actually is quite rarely found in nature. And so this is used very commonly as a natural dye because there are not many alternatives.
Oh, wow.
So you can actually eat it, just like pop the whole thing in your mouth.
Pop the whole thing?
Yeah, whole thing.
I'll pop a little bit of it.
So very often, if you go to a kueh store and there's like kueh with the blue rice, very commonly it's actually dyed using the blue pea flower.
It's subtle, but it definitely has a pinch, like a pop to it. Yeah.
Kind of like a lettuce, I think.
Yeah, actually.
Also, these guys, these are my favorite.
Ooh.
So these are society garlic plants. And these are the flowers.
Pretty.
Yeah, so they're purple, they're very sweet looking, but they're gonna give you garlic breath for the whole day. Yeah.
Okay. Wow.
It's like after you eat chicken rice and you've had too much chili, that kind of a garlic breath.
Thank God I have my mask on. But, here we go. This is garlic. Wow.
It's strong, yeah.
Wow, this is garlic. Like, it doesn't look like garlic, but it's garlic. That's crazy.
And it looks so innocent, right? Like
It looks so pretty. It's like just hanging out there, and then when you eat it, it just,
yeah.
wow.
So plants teach us lessons like don't judge a book by its cover too.
Yeah, there you go. Nature teaching us back.
Yeah.
Yeah, really. So Sarah, the beautiful thing about Edible Garden City, I think, is how it's changing this idea that farming is only for old people. You know, I think a lot of people still have that misconception.
Yeah, and so if you just look at our staff here at Edible Garden City, our average age is about 28 years old. And you're right, a lot of people think that gardening is only for older folks, because when we go to our HDB estates, for instance, our community gardens, mainly attended to by retirees. But we see actually that the trend is moving in a way that lots of young people are actually taking up gardening. And gardening is something that is so inclusive, all types of people, you know, no matter your ability, your age, you can actually enjoy gardening. So we think it's also a great tool for intergenerational bonding, getting to know your grandparents, doing something as a family.
I love that. And I love that idea that, you know, gardening, yes, it's for the land, but in a way the land is also helping us. Like you said, it's bonding us.
What really struck out for me as you're sharing your wonderful journey is about, you know, you getting interested in the land became about you being interested in yourself, and also you, like, new lessons and new life thoughts and new mindsets also started rising from you learning about the land. And the same thing with you being aware of what you need to pursue. You learned more about the external world around you as well. And I think that's quite magical, that interconnection of working with the land, with what you do, unconsciously it just came about. So I guess my question is, you know, having done this for a while now, how do you think working with land, or how do you think gardening aids in mental health? How do you think it shifts your mindset in some ways?
It's a great question, because, you know, having worked in a garden for quite many years now, every time, you know, I was doing something in a garden and sort of working in that, you kind of feel that you come out a little bit more peaceful, you know, and a little bit happier. We did a program with the National Parks Board, and they were actually running a series of tests or studies around horticulture therapy. And the scientific evidence that came out from that was clear that the stress markers actually decrease post horticulture therapy intervention. So horticulture therapy is really for patients or people to do activities in the garden where they're surrounded by greens, where there's certain life lessons they can actually learn from the process of gardening. So for example, I'm growing this plant and it suddenly just died. And, you know, it's probably a life lesson that, you know, that there are failures in life and, you know, that kind of stuff that we have to face up to. But out of 10, you know, 5 thrived and it's growing really well. And, you know, we just have to be more appreciative. So there are a lot of life lessons there. But I think what I felt was really strong that comes out through working in the garden a lot is to see the changes. And seeing the change actually kind of brings about the whole impermanent idea of how life is like, right? You know, today the garden might look beautiful and thriving, but tomorrow Mr. Grasshopper comes and eats half your garden. And that's the impermanence of gardens. Also find a little bit of joy trying to outsmart nature sometimes, you know. But I always get trumped by nature, you know. I thought I got it. I thought I knew what to do.
Mother Nature knows best.
You have small success and you feel really good about yourself. I think that is also quite therapeutic in ways that you have small wins, ultimately you lose. But again, then there is a message and a teaching that nature sends you. And I find actually nature as a teacher teaches about balance, right? You just need to find that balance. For example, when we deal with pests in an organic way in the garden, we do not eradicate everything, because what we want to create is a balanced ecosystem so that there's pests. Because without pests, the predators won't come, because there's no food source. So what we do is to plant a balance of flowers and different things to attract the predatory insects in, leave some food for them, so they'll make it home, and then they will control the pest population. So I think balance in many ways is what I got out from it.
With Edible Garden City, you do have different programs, you do have different ways to engage with the community.
Yeah, so I think one of the important initiatives within Edible Garden City is through connecting the community with where their food comes from, and also kind of imparting knowledge on how to grow their own food at home, with limited resources or limited sunlight. It is possible to do something at least. I think that was very much the early years what we pushed for. Of course, now this has been a lot more prevalent and picked up by organizations all around Singapore, and so we thought perhaps we really need to pivot and to focus on something, because we're always trying to find a more unique positioning for urban farms within the city, urban farms to play a different role, and providing mental health wellness services, and then also providing good food so urban farms can play that role within communities.
How do you, working with the land and working with food, which essentially is a necessary life force for our bodies and minds. We all need to eat, right? So how do you encourage environmental, stewardship for people in their everyday lives? I mean, is there something that you either go for a walk or work with, I don't know, just your own philosophy around it?
Well, there are few instances where I've seen the whole journey of students, for example, growing their own food, and they started to appreciate the food a lot more. So for example, one of the girls, she saw after harvesting something drop on the ground, and she was like, "Wow, no, this waste. We should pick it up." And so she was really, she knew the value of it. But on the flip side, I've seen also people going through that process. It's like, wow, it's so hard, takes so long, so much effort, but it's only $1 in the shop. Why should I do that, right? So again, there are two sides of the points of views. But again, everyone goes through their own journey of discovery in this space of growing their own food. I think for majority of people, they will gain something beneficial out of it. And what I hope is that through this journey, mindsets can shift and change for people to really appreciate the farmers in the region that is growing the food for them. Really think about the environmental impact that Singapore as a small nation is making on its neighbors by its constant demand for cheap food. Because I think a lot of times the environmental price, the degradation that's happening in other countries to produce food for Singapore is not then borne by the consumers in Singapore. So I think as consumers, we need to be more responsible. When consumers in Singapore demand differently for more sustainable products, they want to know how the farmers are doing farming, then farming practices will change in the region to something that's more sustainable, and then we can create an entire ecosystem around the region.
Well, Bjorn, thanks to interconnection with everything that you're saying and talking about a healthier ecosystem, we are connecting across Zoom from Australia to Singapore. So thank you so much for your time. And just before I log off and say bye, do you have a mantra or something inspiring to share with anyone who's watching?
Yeah, I actually have a phrase from this Japanese agriculture philosopher. His name is Masanobu Fukuoka. He's the author of the One Straw Revolution. So he said agriculture is not the growing of food and crops, but it's really the cultivation and perfection of human beings. And so I just want to leave that with everyone.
Oh my gosh. You just gave me goosebumps. It's kind of
You have
it kind of encompasses everything that we're talking about in some ways. I might go and water my plants now and tend to my little green beings. But thanks so much for your time again. And I look forward to seeing you back in Singapore.
Thank you. See you, Liz.
See
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.